Well, that music signifies that Late Night Health is back on the air live from Supply Side West as the convention kind of winds down a little bit. We're going to spend some time with a new friend here on Late Night Health. Late Night Health is powered by Pod Clips. And Pod Clips is a new podcasting network that's will be launching very, very soon. We appreciate all the help from the Pod Clips guys to get us here to Las Vegas. We're going to talk with Dr. Tracey Seipel, who is the CEO and co-founder of, believe it or not, the Seipel Group. And you're based here in the U.S. and you have another branch in Australia? In Australia,
yeah. Good evening, Mark. We're based in Australia and we have another branch here in the US.
Gotcha. What is the Seipel Group all about?
So Seipel Group, we're predominantly a research and development company, and our focus is bladder control, healthy bladder control. And bladder control problems increase with age and are as prevalent as arthritis, but nobody's talking about it. So we've started and are continuing the conversation.
So this is people who can't control peeing.
That's right.
I mean, that's basically it.
Basically, yes. I mean, as children it's acceptable and we grow out of it, but if you're an adult and have problems with your bladder control, it's generally not acceptable.
No, exactly. When we met yesterday, we were in a group of, 300 or 400 people in that small room? I wish they had more room. Anyway.
Yes, it was crowded.
It was very crowded. But what you said to me was that over half of those people have a bladder issue.
Correct. Yes, it's very prevalent. From the age of 18, so all adults, 1 in 6 will have an overactive bladder where they have to go too often or rush. For women, it's 40% have accidents after childbirth, and then over the age of 55, 60, it's usually half the population and increasing with increasing age.
And that's both men and women.
Men and women, that's right. Often people think it's a female problem, and perhaps the coughing, laughing, sneezing and having accidents is more prevalent for women. But no, for men, the overactive bladder, the rushing urgency affects men as much as women.
By the way, Dr. Tracey is an ND, naturopathic doctor. Why is it, and I think it's psychological rather than physical, is that, and I asked you about this last night, I don't think we got it covered. What happens is that somebody wants to go to the bathroom, they know they have to go. Once they get into the bathroom, they have to rip their clothes off because the urgency just pops. Stephanie across the way, your marketing person, is laughing. It must happen to her. Why does that happen?
Well, it's the psychological aspect of, the anticipation of reaching the bathroom and the anxiety about that. So, it sets off a physiological reaction to relaxed sphincters. And, yes, and if you don't have good sphincter and bladder control, then you can have the accident. They also call it latchkey incontinence, where people get to the front door and they're trying to get the key in the front door. And there is, Mark, just even practically for that, there is a neural reflex that if you press your toes into the floor, it'll set off the neural pathway and actually can switch off that signal. So you sometimes can get better bladder control just by pressing your toes into the ground.
I will remember that.
For next time.
Next time. Excuse me, I got to go. See, I told you, Stephanie. All right. You have several products for both men and women?
Correct.
The problem is evident. If you go into a CVS, a Rite Aid, Costco, they have an aisle or more of incontinent products, and most of these they're diapers for adults. They're embarrassing.
Yes, and I feel they're a Band-Aid solution. They're not really resolving the poor control. They're just covering it up. Do you know the biggest household product, fastest growing household product is the adult diapers and adult padded underwear. And it's a huge environmental issue. It's the third largest environmental issue globally. And they don't really break down. I was sharing with you last night, a few days after Columbus Day, that if Christopher Columbus had been wearing an adult diaper and he buried it, it probably would still be in the ground today because it needs the air and the sunlight to break down. So
it's over 400 many more.
Yes, many years.
It's like,
right.
what, 600 years?
Yes.
Wow. So it's an environmental issue as well.
Yes, yes.
And nobody wants to find a diaper loaded with urine that's 400 or 500 years old.
No, it's getting a visual on this here.
Yeah, I have a visual on it, and it's not a pretty one. Tracey, tell us about your product. In other words, what is it called, and how does it help me or a woman control their bladder?
Yes, well, what it does, Mark, is the product is called Urox, with the U-R-O-X, and Urox is a 3-herb combination that we have developed over the past 20 years. So we started working on this in the late 1990s and have kept improving and refining the formula to the standardised extract formula that we have today. And what it does is it works naturally to strengthen the tone of the bladder wall and just provide support to the pelvic floor muscles that sit under the bladder and hold it up, and support the collagen connective tissue and stop that excessive nerve triggering of the detrusor muscles that sit on top of the bladder, and keep firing when you're increasingly having that urge to go. So it works. The product Urox will start to work after about 2 to 4 weeks. People start noticing they're going less often, they're getting a bit more control, and then 1 to 2 months they'll notice their accidents usually reduce. They'll have less reliance on the pads and just increased confidence with their bladder control.
There are pharmaceutical products for this, but one of them I can think of, I think it's still on the market. I don't know the name of it. I just remember seeing a woman, she's running all over the place, and her bladder is following her, I think.
Yes.
And there's one where a woman is sitting having lunch or dinner and has to go. I mean, and now.
And it's quick, yes.
And it's quick. The problem is that one of the side effects is loss of memory.
Yes, that's true. And the American Medical Journal, and just this year the British Medical Journal,
JAMA,
JAMA and BMJ, yes, and they looked at people who had this memory loss and confusion, and they thought this seems to be permanent. So they went and looked retrospectively 20 years at over 350,000 people and showed, yes, this is permanent, the memory loss. So it is a side effect, and it is something people should be thinking of and trying to really work with their exercises, their diet, and other solutions as much as possible, rather than relying on those medications.
Let's go back 2 years when you were a young woman.
It's a few more than 2.
What led you to become a naturopath?
Oh, okay. Actually, from very young, I was very interested in health, and I actually became quite ill, and it was a viral infection, and there was no treatment, but I was ill for quite a few months in my teens, and I just felt totally helpless, that there was no solution or no answers for me. So it was really after that I became interested in natural medicine, and pretty much it's been my world my whole adult life.
You went to school where?
I went in Australia at the Australian College of Natural Medicine, and the University of Queensland as well, and University of Sydney. There's been a trail of them, but in Australia, largely in Australia.
And the difference between an ND and an MD, in your opinion, is?
Well, a naturopathic doctor, it's the basis is that the body heals itself. It just has to be given the correct environment, and we facilitate the healing with as natural as much as possible, with traditionally well-documented treatments, but also evidence research whenever we have that to show there's a better way. So that the basic premise is to allow the body to heal, and let's facilitate that using natural. So there is a little bit of a difference. The more MD, medical doctor model, is a more reductionist model. Let's narrow the disease down to one biochemical pathway or one process, and let's find a pharmaceutical to match that. Whereas the naturopathic way is more expansionist, so it's more to do with, like now we have lifestyle diseases. We're not dying of contaminated water or the plague were actually dying from eating too much and diabetes and heart disease and cancer. And they're very much multifactorial disorders which need a multifactorial treatment approach, which is what holistic medicine and natural medicine does.
Does the Seipel Group specialize in that one area of bladder control?
Yes, our focus, previously we were, I had one of the first formulas for diabetes. I'm a diabetes educator as well. One of the first formulas for tinnitus, but really it was bladder control has been the focus really for the last 20 years. And, excuse me, and it's growing. As many people, as I said, have arthritis, will have poor bladder control, and it's just such a debilitating problem. People become reclusive. It's one of the leading causes for people to have to go into nursing care. They just can't manage their bladder control and all of the other problems.
I would imagine that the psychological aspect as well. First of all, it's embarrassing. The second aspect is that you become isolated.
That's right. People become very isolated. So if you imagine you have to get on a bus and it takes you more than an hour to go from your house to the next toilet. Well, then you can't get on that bus. So you'll stop going to the mall, you'll stop going out, you stop staying overnight at friends or family because you're the one up all night disturbing people, or you're worried about an odour, malodor, smell. So people stop exercising, stop playing golf, and tennis because they'll have accidents.
I would also think that, go ahead, take a drink. This is live, so whatever happens, if the background falls, we just keep going.
We just keep going.
Keep going. I would also imagine this would affect somebody in a relationship regarding sex.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, there's definitely an impairment of intimacy because of odour or people concerned about accidents. So it permeates all aspects of people's lives, and it's good we're talking about this on your show. Thank you for covering this, because people often think it's only them and they don't talk about it. Less than half of people will tell their partner or their doctor. So they won't even tell.
They won't even tell their doctor.
No, they won't even tell. They're too embarrassed. And often people resign themselves to the fact of just accepting it. But there are solutions out there. Can I share a story with you? We did some focus group research in the States, where I love the States. I've been coming up here for 20 years. and we did some focus group research. And one woman in the research, they were talking about what is the impact of your bladder on your life. And she said, well, to give people an example of what it feels like for her, she's so embarrassed and it really restricts her life. That a tornado was coming through her town, and they were
what was coming?
A tornado.
A tornado.
So they were evacuating, and she said, "No, I'm staying in my house," because she didn't know if her pad would last. She didn't know the facilities where she was going. So the fear of death was less than the fear of her being exposed with her bladder, poor bladder function.
Moly.
So it's so for those who are affected, they're not alone. There are a lot of options for helping improve bladder control. The walls are caving in.
The walls are caving in. You can hear that.
Yes.
It's really a shame, and this is something that's an easy fix. You have different varieties
of formulations. Yes, so we have our latest award-winning research, which was published last year.
By the way, one of the technicians who's helped set up, he's rushing to the restroom.
Yes,
he has
that's
urgency.
right. He's knocking everything over his way. I can
on
hear
his
it.
way.
Yes,
It really
it's
is.
intense. It's intense. Yes, our latest research, we studied men and women, adult men and women, and we had pretty consistent results because the bladder is the same in men and women. Men often think their bladder problems are a prostate problem, but what we've shown, what the research shows is half the time it's actually overactive bladder, not just prostate. So men
Not
can
benign,
also... Not prostate hypertrophy, yes. So with Urox, we've shown that we can reduce the frequency and the urgency quite dramatically by 60%. We halved the nocturia, or getting out of bed at night, and the Urox also showed about just over 60% reduction in bladder accidents, to the point that we had almost a quarter of people who had the incontinence or the accidents at the start of the trial. By 2 months, they were fully continent and not needing to rely on the pads.
Wow, that's very good.
Yeah, it was really good.
I know that men tend to get up. I've talked to a guy, I'm trying to think, was probably 60 at the time, and he was getting up 5 to 6 times a night.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And is, you know, he has an enlarged prostate, but
Yes.
getting up like that, being sleep deprived, how
Well,
the
that's
heck
right.
do you
He
work
sleep-
the next morning?
Well, he doesn't, but also he probably stops exercising because he's so tired, and that's the result of the poor
He
sleep
has
as
stopped
well.
exercising. He weighs as much as you and I do together, plus Stephanie.
So then he gets all these other problems from his
Oh, he's
increased weight.
I would bank that he's diabetic.
Yeah, and on it goes. So you can see it may not seem like much to the outsider, but just him having that poor bladder control is permeating his life, and impacting. They're getting closer. Should we be worried?
I don't know. I think Stephanie did this. I think she's done this on purpose to,
She's shaking her hair.
She's shaking her. I've known her for 20 years, and I think she's just playing a joke on us.
Setting us up.
What is Urox available for manufacturers, or is it available to the consumer?
It's available to both. So the finished product is called Urox. It's available on things like Amazon and different areas, but we're also an ingredient, so we are included in other people's formulations. It's interesting too. I know there are other options out there also, which is good to see. More options for people. But Urox is the only product with research to show it helps with the incontinence and the accidents.
And what kind of research was done?
So the research was conducted. The latest research was conducted in Australia. It was a randomised, double-blind, randomised placebo-controlled trial.
FDA kind of style.
Yeah, the gold
test.
standard.
Right.
And through the University of Queensland, which is in, I think, it's in the top. It's at least one of the top 100 universities globally in Australia, and the University of Tasmania and our Endeavour College of Natural Health. So between the three institutions in Australia, it was conducted, and as I said, with both men and women.
We've actually done a live show with somebody. I can't remember what he talked about from Tanzania. I asked him if the devil was there, but
was that Tanzania or Tasmania?
Maybe Tasmania. I don't know. It worked either way. I was telling a joke.
That's right. Well, unfortunately for the Tasmanians, often they're right down the bottom. They're right close to Antarctica, and the land is separate to the rest of Australia. So
right. It's an island.
That's right. Australia is like the biggest island, and then Tasmania is this other little island down the bottom. And but often on maps, people leave them off, and it's like they don't even exist. They're not even legitimatized to be
just
on the
a
map.
little. How big is it? I mean, the population must be pretty small.
Tasmania is quite small. Yes.
Got
yes.
it. What is in the works for you at the Seipel Group and for Urox?
Yes. So we really. All of our research over the past 2 decades shows that Urox is the superior formula for the wide range of bladder control problems. So we really just want to do everything we can to get the product to people who need it, so they can feel the life-changing effects. So we're getting. We've had some really good meetings here, and we're partnering with a number of other really quality American companies, so they can. They can make the Urox available for their.
Is it available now or not?
Yes, it is available now.
And how do you get it? You go to Amazon?
Yeah, on Amazon, look up Urox or uroxbladderhealth.com. We have a website, so Urox Bladder Health. That's what we're aiming for.
And that's spelled UROX.
UROX. That's correct.
UROX Bladder Health.com. UROXBladderHealth.com. Tracey, look forward to talking to you again soon. How many years did you model?
I have a niece who was actually going in for a foot modelling job, but I don't know if it's inappropriate, but they told me to wear my bikini, and I said, darling, I don't think you should go to that.
No.
She didn't go, no.
No. Foot modelling, huh? Yeah. Was that here in the States? Or
no, that was in Australia. It happens in Australia too, yeah.
Got it. All right, men are pigs. Listen, thank you very much for joining us. Thanks, Stephanie, for bringing Tracey Seipel by from the Seipel Group. She is the co-CEO and the founder of the organization, and you can find out more by going to uroxbladderhealth.com. I'm Mark Allen, and guess what's happening right now? the music is coming back. And so as that music comes up, we know that it's time for us to leave this segment. We do have some more interviews coming up later on today, live from Supply Side West in Las Vegas at the Mandalay Bay. We thank the people over at Pod Clips, and finally getting it right, Pod Clips, and Mike Anderson for helping put this together. Lots of stuff happening at latenighthealth.com. All of these interviews will be there over the weekend, and they're available right now live at facebook.com/latenighthealthradio. That's facebook.com/latenighthealthradio. All right, I'll be back. I'm Mark Allen. Don't go away. Stay tuned. We'll have more coming up.